Over the years, the VR market has finally gone more mainstream than ever before, and with it comes competition. Right now in this early state of the market, HTC, Oculus, and now Valve are big players, but interest seems to be turning more towards Valve's Index headset because of the upcoming game Half Life Alyx. The Oculus Rift S as well is an alternative to this with its lower price tag. But what are the main differences between these two that make the Rift S $400 and the Index $1,000? Well, let's find out. The resolution for the Index is 2880 by 1600 at 120 Hz, and also it has a field of view that's 20 degrees wider than the standard, which is between 80 and 90, so this is at 110, so you have a wider field of view. The minimum specs Valve wants for your PC to handle this is either an NVIDIA GTX 970 graphics card or an AMD RX 480, as well as having 8GB of RAM. The Index itself has headphones integrated already into the system, so you don't have to worry about using your own headphones. It also uses the Lighthouse system, which contains 2 camera boxes to set up in your VR space. The resolution on the Rift S is a little bit smaller at 2560 by 1440 at 80 Hz. The minimum specs Oculus recommends for the Rift S is an NVIDIA GTX 960 or an AMD Radeon R9 290 with 8GB of RAM. Now, unlike the audio on the first Rift, the Rift S doesn't have headphones. Instead, it has speakers on the headset. It also does have an optional headphone jack though to plug in your own headphones. The Rift S also doesn't have the Lighthouse system. Instead, it has its own 5-camera sensor tracking system. So just to prevent any confusion here, on this category I'm comparing the softwares themselves that the headsets come with, not the headsets themselves. Anyways though, Valve of course has a huge advantage here with Steam, having a ton of huge VR titles from The Lab, Boneworks, The Forest, Skyrim, Fallout 4, Doom, No Man's Sky, and of course Half Life Alyx. Oculus also has its share of exclusive titles like Vader Immortal, Marvel Powers United, Robo Recall, and there's supposed to be a new Medal of Honor game coming onto Oculus. Yeah, both softwares do share a lot of similar games together though, like Beat Saber, The Walking Dead, various simulator games, Superhot, VR Chat, and that list is a lot wider and it goes on and on. Both of the OSs are similar in some forms. For example, you have a main menu hub style environment where you can interact with it, and you can change the environment into different areas and stuff. One cool thing on both of them is virtual desktop, which of course gives you access to your desktop from your VR headset. So now you can watch videos on a bigger screen and it feels like I am. The Oculus one does feel more realistic. It almost seems like I'm watching stuff on a 40-inch curved TV, while Steam's is more window-ish. Also, because it is a virtual desktop, this means that technically I can play non-VR Steam games on this quote-unquote bigger screen. It's not a good way clearly to play these games, because this really wasn't what virtual desktop was made for, but it still is pretty cool. Now, this is a category that I've never talked about on this series, mostly because this is the first time I've covered a product that involves feeling. So this category is really about the experience that I got from both products and features that helped to carry on this experience. From an outside view, like any of you would think, as I also did, the Index wouldn't have any differences from the Rift S, just being $1,000 because of the name. But I was wrong. The quality of the Index definitely is a lot better than the Rift S. The first thing I noticed, of course, was putting it on. It definitely feels a lot more comfortable. Even though the resolution and field of depth difference between the Rift S is small, it still makes a big difference and really does look a lot better. Another thing I noticed as well is that it has a better controller. With it, the Index will be able to detect all of your finger movement as opposed to the Rift S only detecting I think like 3 of your fingers. This means that grabbing an item in a game feels a lot more realistic, cause you literally just grab your controller and you'll pick up the item in the game, as opposed to the Rift S where all you have to do is click the side button. There are also other little things like haptic feedback being a lot better. When you pull back on a bow, you will literally feel the clicking sense that you would get with a real bow. The Index's headphones definitely do feel immersive also, having surround sound. But the main problem though with the Index is that it requires more equipment. As mentioned earlier, it has camera boxes that need to be plugged into a wall individually, and also the headset itself has to be plugged into a wall as well, as opposed to the Rift S on the other hand that only needs to be plugged into your computer and also doesn't need box cameras as it has its own 5-camera tracking system. And this tracking system actually is pretty solid. It doesn't feel like some cheap gimmick that's attempted by Oculus. Now of course with the Oculus you'll have a lower resolution. Also it doesn't have headphones, instead going for speakers, and the speakers do sound pretty good. You're clearly not going to get like index level surround sound from them. And also another issue is that because they're speakers, other people would be able to hear you, but in that case if those things bother you, of course there is a headphone jack. So yeah, but now let's get to the conclusion. The Index comes at $999 for the whole package, while the Rift S comes at a smaller price of $399. You could drop the price down for the Index by minusing out the lighthouses, but the price still would be higher than the Rift S at $750. You should also factor in if you have any interest at all in Oculus's software and their own store. The only thing I think I would miss if I didn't get an Oculus would be Vader Immortal, but that's about it, and I'm sure 99% of you, like me, are using this for Steam. So I would say for those that are on a tighter budget who still want to get a newer headset, I would say to go for the Oculus Rift S. The quality of the resolution won't be the same as it is on the Index, and the sound quality might be reduced as well, but you are saving $600. On the other hand though, for those with a bigger budget, the Index is made directly by Valve, which can be an advantage when looking at games that are made by Valve, like Half Life Alyx. I'm more than 99% sure that they would optimize Half Life Alyx and any other future Valve VR games around the Index, because of course it's Valve's own product, so why wouldn't they do that? It is going to be a bigger setup of course than the Rift S, but if that doesn't bother you and the price doesn't either, then I would say to go for the Index. But then of course you have to factor in something else, which is of course your PC. Now some of you might be VR ready and even Half Life Alyx ready, but if you're not or you don't know, just make sure before you buy or after you buy that you upgrade your PC and make sure that's ready to go, because that wouldn't be a pleasant surprise to not be able to run any VR games after getting your VR headset. Now in the event that both prices are still too high for you, you could get older headsets. Like for example, the first Oculus Rift goes for around like $250 on eBay, and it does have the integrated headphones, so that's a plus. It does have a weaker resolution at 2160 by 1200 when compared to the Rift S's 2560 by 1440. There is of course also the first HTC Vive, which also could go around for like $250, and that one also goes at 2160 by 1200. But yeah, the future of VR and its market is gonna be really interesting, especially because of Half Life Alyx. A lot of people are getting VR just for that game, and I can't wait to see where the future of VR goes. And with that being said, thank you guys for watching, and I will see you in the next one.